terms of her writing and her work. Kris has for more than 2 decades been actively involved in analyzing, assessing, critiquing, and defining the development agenda for Caribbean societies. She holds a PhD in literatures from the University of the West Indies and a diploma in mass communication from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in New Delhi, India. She also completed fellowships as a professional fellow of the Association of Commonwealth Universities in the UK at Wolfson College, Cambridge University in the UK, and the Foreign Press Centre, Japan. She's also participated in numerous professional development seminars, courses, and workshops in management, journalism, communications, media, gender, culture, economics, agriculture, education, civic participation, among others. She is a media, culture, literary consultant, educator, print and television journalist, editor, producer, researcher, author, and lecturer on development issues of culture, media, literature, and gender of the Caribbean at international, regional, and national levels. She's also the coordinator of the social networking site Caribbean Literary Salon at caribbeanliterarysalon.ning.com, for those of you who are interested. She writes and produces for new and conventional media, has prepared and executed successful collaborative outreach strategies involving international agencies, governments, private sector, and non-governmental organizations across the world. And these include the global networks, several global networks and agencies. Kris is the author of Littscapes, Landscapes of Fiction from Trinidad and Tobago. She's also the author of Through the Political Glass Ceiling, Race to the Prime Ministership, by Trinidad and Tobago's first female Prime Minister, Pamela Bissau, and she's also the author of Finding a Place. This afternoon, we're very happy to be able to present to you some plays. And so, to begin today's presentations, because we're in lovely Guyana, and this book is basically about the appearance of landscapes and places in Caribbean literature, I'd like to ask Tiffany Vasquez to come and sing for us a beautiful Guyana song, which I'm sure you will recognize.
I have known each other on and off for some time now. I am upfront to thanking the Theatre Guild, who really on very, very short notice as well put on this short entertainment that you've seen. And in doing so, reflected exactly of this book. What the purpose of this book is, which is that, and as I really tapped into it, that connectivity to national literature and nationalism, and certainly the arts and culture to nationalism. So having said all of that, I would begin a little bit by drawing attention to the title of this event, a LiTTribute. And this came about, this title, first of all, came about last year when, following the launch in Trinidad around the independence, the 50th anniversary of independence of Trinidad and Tobago, a kind of celebration that I find quite problematic personally, but I'll get to that another while. Following that, I did something I call a LiTTribute to the Republic. It was hosted by the First Lady, which was something similar to what we're doing here, which was connecting the book with other creative activities in music and song and dance and art, and celebrating that in edifices like this. The launch was done in 2007 in Trinidad and Tobago. It's been sitting dormant for 6 years, unoccupied, and of course we're trying to stimulate some interest in that. So I was very fortunate to be allowed to do the launch of this gift there. and then the LiTTribute at another very significant heritage building around the Queen's Park Savannah, not 100% Savannah, but actually located quite near them and built in the same period that they were built as well. So that's the kind of connections, in a way, Littscapes has been trying to accomplish beyond the pages of the text itself, to connect with the actual lifestyles of the country and the community. So I really took obvious authorial license with the title of this event, and the title of the book itself, to combine, as I'll rightly pointed out, as a tribute to Trinidad and Tobago, and as a tribute to literature. So, really, this isn't really the second LiTTribute. If we count the launch, if we count what took place after, there was also the launch of Lit Tours, which is the literary tour. That is one of the purposes and the intentions of the book. And I quite rightly understand his dilemma in trying to categorize the book, because it is trying to do several things at one time. And thank you, Al, for this really flattering note that maybe it feels quite close at some times and clearly deficient in some areas, which of course, as you noted, opens the way for a second edition, if I have the energy and the time. Really, the whole idea behind Littscapes has been now taken on a life of its own. This kind of connection now that it's making outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and I've had that kind of feedback of the kind of relevance the book has for other societies. Of course, because our writers, while they're writing out inspired by Trinidad and Tobago, as I pointed out, are also inspired by world experiences. So the various diasporas, the Caribbean diaspora, etc., have actually connected with the work and on that kind of level. So it really has been taken a life of its own, as on that paper day when we stumbled. In fact, going on the first literary tour, stumbled upon some very old defaced tombs of one of the earliest European families settled in Trinidad, and this was a French family shipwrecked en route from Martinique to Venezuela in the early 18th century. But that has been our Caribbean story. It's really inescapably our stories are tied up and entangled and intermingled with each other's, and we stumble upon them at very, very odd moments that at times really go back way into our history, as I've been saying all week. As now the unfolding story of Littscapes post-publication with these LiTTributes, the Lit Tours, it is also helping to expand the knowledge. And in fact, some of that will be reflected in my next also very ambitious publication, which is on the table and almost ready to go. It's called Letters to Lizzie, an engagement with Queen Elizabeth in the context of her 60th Jubilee Independence celebrations, and of course the context of independence of the region, of the Caribbean region. And as I mentioned before, it's our sense of celebration of that word independence I find particularly problematic. So that book is going to explore some of the problems I have with that word, and I think many of us in the region do in fact as well. Because given, and it's reflected in the vision and the worldview of Littscapes, that we really ought not to be finding our age in terms of the time of recent self-governance, but as a sum total of all our history and experiences, and the sum total of all the peoples who came, and those whom they met here, and the yet nebulous truth from whence they came, and how our islands and this, our continent, began. I know you're doing some work in Ghana in terms of unraveling that story as well. So what is the story of these LiTTribute and Littscapes itself unfold is that it is a clearer and clearer that is islands, and when I talk about islands now, I'm talking about Trinidad and Tobago and the island elements of the Caribbean. That we are not just islands, we are part of that continent, and as one of our writers said, part of that continent at the beginning of the world. Lawrence Scott in his novel featured in Littscapes, the novel was called Witchbone. So that brings me to beginnings. I've never been able to contemplate the history of mine islands as the isolated story of independence or any one migrant group or of colonialism itself, and not the recent migration that brought us, most of us here, nor even the prehistoric ones. So I've been spending times when I'm not writing and otherwise engaged, poring over maps and drawing the invisible line that connects us to the continent, the South American rivers and the topography of our islands. And I've been looking at biological studies of our flora and fauna and the geological and anthropological and archaeological reports that have come out of our area. And even without that, also from a sense of awareness that there are more primordial links which we have been taught, and I say taught in a deliberate kind of way, to forget. So within the whole context of debates and discussions about globalization, as we hear bandied about, there are these other debates and discussions that I think we need to start exploring in a deeper kind of focus on globe forming, in which we have today not really seen ourselves or position ourselves at the center, but which our writers have, and where our writers of fiction have positioned us. A couple of months ago, when an anaconda crawled up the Caribbean River in central Trinidad, our attention was due awake to the realities of such primordial connections, to our links to the ecology of South America. So we knew it can happen. It has been part of our knowledge, but we have buried that somewhere deep in the dark recesses of our minds. Until about 4 years ago, I had never been to Guyana, the land just a stone's throw away. And then the first time I came, it was just for a day. So all I saw was the route to and from the airport. And immediately it recreated for me the landscape around the Gangetic Plains of India, from which some of our ancestors originated. And you connect of why people settle and find a home elsewhere. Very, very similar as well to the landscape in central Trinidad, where many of the settlers from India, the migrants from India settled. Anyway, last year I was back in Guyana, and this time for a couple more days, and saw a little more. And some of what lay behind the mistake of the Moray River. So this time around, my third twice here, I braved the pothole roads with waves ahead, and on a return boat that was little more than a canoe, ventured further into what Joseph Conrad had called the heart of darkness. For me, it was and our Kris Rampersaud, who we share with you through marriage, is married to Guyanese. So I had many hilarious private moments laughing at Lizzie through Johnny Garrett's mashing of the Queen's English, for instance. So now she had to take note and make him the UK's poet laureate. Hats off to that, and congrats to John and all of you for Guyana for that achievement. And I heard with Martin Carter what Walter Rodney danced on the walls of prison, and shared an insistence that although sometimes our islands and our spaces are considered a prison, it was my wall and hence mine to cry, to dance on. So one of my favorite Martin Carter poems, The Night of Dawn, and I've never ceased to marvel at this one, that it was written in 1927, with the lines, "We who are sweepers of an ancient sky, discoverers of new planet, southern stars." 1927, yes? You heard me. Before space travel, before megathrust to the moon, right? Our writers were already envisioning a kind of exploration. So they've been our visionaries who we have remained blind to the enormous potentials and possibilities of ourselves and that they be presenting us with. So that's why I've asked, seeing this poem has been for me, this Martin Carter poem, really a source of inspiration for many, many, many years, with its notes of defiance, of empowerment, of envisioning, of re-envisioning. And well, it still is, and everything, and a lot of them trying to do. So, in essence, we are not an island. We are continuously changing and exchanging between and among us. We need to recognize how much of a tremendous force it is when sometimes we are saying to our young people that there is a better world out there, and that's what they should try to make something of themselves, forcing and pushing them out to discover new planets and certain stars elsewhere, when of course not recognizing or not showing them the ones that are hanging directly above their heads. So it is this kind of reawakening that I'm hoping of Littscapes, of these events like these, of these LiTTributes, and all its ambitions and intentions. And what I called at its launch last year, a revolution at reading, a revolution to re-envision ourselves as to how we look at the world at the first and foremost instance, and how we look at the rest of the world and our place in it, as centers and not as peripheries, as sweepers of an ancient sky, not as the offsprings of a new world, and as discoverers of new planets and suddenly developing stars, not as stargazers. I think that is our challenge, to lift ourselves beyond the self-derision and self-negation that we have often been hinged with. And that's what brought me to Guyana this time around, was that my own exploratory urge. Littscape, I hope, is a stimulant to curiosity like that, to be so that we can be curious about ourselves in the first instance, our immediate locale, and to discover and explore and rediscover ourselves and those around us, and those who have been exploring and discovering us, our writers, those who have been probing and can stimulate us to probe deeper beneath ourselves, to move beyond the self-deprecation that we so often enjoy, and to discover our ugliness too, and to our beauty. And one of the things I will probably did not mention, that Littscape does not gloss over the ugliness, nor do the writers. The writers are very stark and raw in their presentation of both our ugliness and our beauty, which we can clearly use for them to face up to. So that's what I found in the Guyana hinterland this week, and what I began to find as I traced the imaginary lines that connect us, island and continent. So this is a liturgy, a praise song to all those who came before, and of those enormous shoulders we stand on, on which I stand on, and I thank you for that, this opportunity.
Women's services here this evening, and of course in the entire preparation for this, she actually did an entirely new interpretation of the program that I gave her, and it's really, really very inspiring. So thank you, Paloma. I saw what you can do last night with your children at that performance. So certainly, I think this can go much, much further in the varieties of ways we can interpret the concept of LiTTribute that was meant through these occasions. So thank you so very much. Yes, and to Al for that very, 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 very inspiring review. You know, it's always, yesterday I was interviewed by one of the television stations, and they're asking me, so when did you know you wanted to be a writer? And I said, I never wanted to be a writer. I know I'm a reader, and I've always been a reader, and that's what inspired my writing. And then he said, so what do you have to say to people who are aspiring to be writers? And I said, you know, just write.
because it takes a whole lot of courage just to put out your work, to put out a poem, to put out a page. I remember when I started off as a journalist at a newspaper. I would walk around the newsroom and anybody who's reading any of my pieces and close the paper. It just feels so much as if you're giving of yourself and sharing of yourself, and that takes a lot of courage. And then to have your work in the hands of a master like Al, you just wait for bated breath to hear what he's going to say about it. So that takes a lot of courage. Thank you, Al. That was very inspirational. And certainly for the pointers in terms of how the work can be improved as well. So thanks for that. And thank you all for coming out in an evening like this. I'm sure there are so many other better things that you think that you could be doing, but I'm sure you think now that it was worth your while. So well, that, just thank you. Thank you, Ms. Joan from Moray House, who has been really holding the fort these last couple of weeks, making sure that everything was in place for this event. So thank you and good night.